We are just over 2 weeks away from the NHL Draft Lottery happening on June the 26th, so I thought today we'd run another 2020 draft simulation, and we'll do a mock draft for the top 15 picks. We'll jump into that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned today, we're running an NHL Draft Lottery simulation. We're not all that far away. We're only just over 2 weeks away from it actually taking place. Of course, it could be a pretty crazy time. There's obviously a different format this year with more teams being in the mix. We could see some of the bottom 7 teams of the NHL get those 3 picks, make it a little less interesting. Then at that point, we'll already know at least the first 7 picks. After that, we'll have to wait and see what happens in the NHL play-in series, the qualifying round, I guess we'll call it. But obviously, some of those teams who finished in playoff spots when the NHL season was paused could end up higher up in the draft than they ever imagined due to this unique format that we're experiencing this year. So now we're going to hop onto the computer. We're going to run a simulation and see what happens. Now, of course, the Tankathon.com simulator still has it based on the old way, so teams that are in the play-in round could still be eligible. So we'll kind of go with this for the time being, and we'll see what happens. Let's hop on the computer and simulate the lottery. All right, let's run the lottery and see how she turns out. Here we go, and we have a winner. We have the Chicago Blackhawks getting the first spot, followed by the New York Rangers at the second spot. Detroit then falls to 3. Ottawa falls to 4 and 5 respectively between their pick and the Sharks pick. Then we have LA, Anaheim, New Jersey, Buffalo, Montreal, New Jersey by way of the Arizona pick, Minnesota, Winnipeg, Florida, and Columbus to round out our top 15. So picking first overall, we have the Chicago Blackhawks, and they would no doubt take the consensus #1 overall selection from the QMJHL, Alexis Lafreniere. Can you only imagine Lafreniere playing with the Chicago Blackhawks? He's a dynamic, high-scoring left winger who can also play a physical style of game. Could be a franchise-altering moment for the Blackhawks. Obviously, they had their run of multiple Stanley Cups, and now they're kind of been on the outside looking in more so in the playoffs. Obviously, a lot of their leaders are getting older. They could have an injection of a top player like this back into their franchise would be absolutely huge for the Blackhawks. Next up, picking second overall, we have the New York Rangers, and they have the selection of the top center of the draft, Quinton Byfield. Now, the Rangers are certainly a different team here. They have a lot of good prospects already. They had the option of picking high in the draft, of course, last year with Capo Caco. To get another draft lottery win like this would be absolutely huge. I do think Byfield is just too good of a long-term potential center iceman for them to pass up on. And they have such a deep prospect pool and are getting a lot stronger as a team. They could be a team who can afford to let him play another year of junior and really become that much better and ready for the NHL in another year's time. Next up, selecting third overall, we have the Detroit Red Wings, who unfortunately dropped 2 spots in this draft lottery, and they would select German-born player Tim Stutzle. Now, there's been a lot of debate about the Red Wings, even if they picked first overall, that maybe they would take the German-born Stutzle over Lafreniere, which I really don't think they would do, but I know there has been some people pointing out that they felt there was a possibility that Steve Yzerman might do that. Of course, a lot of that's fueled by the fact that they drafted German-born defenseman Mo Seider last year. Clearly, there's a lot of strong players coming out of that part of the world right now. Germany's been producing some great hockey players, and I can understand the affliction there. But obviously, Stutzle's a terrific hockey player, and I do think he would be the top player in the draft at this point. And Stutzle would be a tremendous addition by the Detroit Red Wings to help with this rebuild. Next up, selecting fourth overall, we have the Ottawa Senators. Of course, this is their own pick. They have another one coming up next as well from the San Jose Sharks, but they would take the top defenseman in the draft, Jamie Drysdale, who would not be a player they would pass up at this point. If Ottawa ends up really picking fourth and Drysdale's on the board, you have to take him. He has the potential to be a #1 top defenseman in the NHL who can quarterback your power play and really be a top minute player. Can play in a lot of situations, really. But Drysdale would be a tremendous addition to an already evolving blue line in Ottawa. They get Thomas Chabot, one of the brighter young defensemen in the league. They have some other great prospects on the blue line coming as well, like Eric Brandstrom and a few others. Add a guy like Drysdale into this mix. Could make a very lethal blue line for the Ottawa Senators for many years to come. Next up, the Ottawa Senators picking again, this time with the pick from the San Jose Sharks they obtained in the Erik Karlsson trade, and they would select a top center iceman in this draft, Marco Rossi, Austrian-born player from the Ottawa 67s, a player they would have had the opportunity to see many times given where he played his junior hockey. Of course, he's a little bit smaller, 5'9", but 180 pounds, but a tremendously gifted offensive player. They do have a fair bit of already good, strong prospects in this system, but they had the opportunity with the previous pick to get the top defenseman in the draft, and now they're going to take a potential top 2 center iceman, and Rossi's that guy, be a tremendous fit. There was a few other players I think they could have used with this selection as well. Had a tough choice, but I personally think Rossi fits best with what the Senators are missing right now in their prospect pool. Next up, selecting 6th overall, we have the LA Kings selecting Lucas Raymond from Sweden. Raymond's one of the top players in this draft as well. One of the better two-way players, tough to play against, can certainly be a strong offensive player as well. And Raymond, I think, is a kind of player that the Kings don't really have in their system now. I did debate, he's one of the players I had in consideration to go to the Ottawa Senators with the previous pick. I just thought Rossi was the better selection for that organization, but I can see Raymond being a terrific fit with the Kings. They have another very deep prospect pool, but he's a different kind of player that I don't feel they have, and I think he could really be that middle six kind of guy who can pitch in offensively, but be strong defensively, be tough to play against, and just be an all-around top player for the Kings. Next up, we have the Anaheim Ducks, and I have them selecting another Swedish player, Alexander HOLTZ, who's arguably one of the top, if not the top, pure goal scorer in the 2020 NHL Draft. He's got a decent size, over 6 feet tall, about 190 pounds. Is a right shot player who can certainly score in high quantities here. Holtz could be a terrific high-scoring winger to go along with some of their other already top center icemen that are in their prospect pool. Look at guys like Trevor Zegras, and they have other young players already in the system like Sam Steele. They have the center ice position already in pretty good shape. I mean, they could consider taking a center here as well. I mean, obviously, there's still some decent centers on the board, but I think Holtz could be that sniper type of player who would fit well if they already have in their system. Next up, we have the New Jersey Devils, and I have them selecting another top center iceman here, Cole Perfetti, who's certainly one of the top centers in this draft, an extremely smart player, tremendous hockey IQ. He's a shot-first center iceman, but also has very creative, good skills. Could stand to be a little bit more explosive with his skating. There's some minor things there he can work on to just give himself a little bit more time and space. He likely plays another year of junior, but given what New Jersey has going on with their rebuild, he could be the perfect complementary center iceman in behind a player like Jack Hughes. Of course, they got Nico Hischier there as well. This is another player who could be a tremendous gift here for New Jersey in their rebuild to get a strong group of players. Of course, they already have another pick coming up as well, where they can maybe look to a different direction. But in my opinion, where they're picking here, I think they choose Cole Perfetti. Next up, we have the Buffalo Sabres selecting, and I have them taking the top goalie in the draft, Russian prospect Yaroslav Askarov. The Buffalo Sabres really could use a good goaltender in this position, I think. Based on what else is on the board in this situation, I think he's a great selection for Buffalo. Yes, they have guys like Allmark right now in the NHL level, who's certainly a pretty decent goalie. They have Ukko-Pekka Laukkonen as a potential option down the road, but hard to say what he becomes. But Askarov is one of the higher rated goalies in the more recent drafts and has more of the potential to be that all-star franchise goalie. So given where they are in the draft order here, I think they have to select the netminder of the future for them. Next up, we have the Montreal Canadiens selecting, and I have them taking another Finnish center iceman, Anton Lundell. Of course, not long ago, they selected a top center iceman from Finland, Jesperi Kotkaniemi. I think Lundell will be another great complementary piece to the Habs prospect pool. He's a decent size, 6'1", but 185 pounds. He can play the wing as well. I'm not sure exactly what he'll be at the NHL level, but right now, he's projecting to be a center in my opinion. He's very well-rounded, has great vision, good puck handling skills, good passing skills, really can play all around. I think he probably projects more like a number 2 center iceman, but he really at this point is showing that he can be a very dependable center iceman in all situations, which is something they could desperately use. Next up, we have the New Jersey Devils with their second first-round pick, selecting defenseman Jake Sanderson. Now, of course, with their other pick, they already addressed a different need at the forward group. Now they're selecting a player who's going to really help their blue line. Now, Sanderson's not the flashy guy on the blue line like you're going to see with the Jamie Drysdale, but he does do a lot of the little things right. He's a great skater. He knows when to move up, when to stay back, all around good in his own end. Jake Sanderson is a really smart, steady presence really on the blue line, and would be a tremendous addition to really help reshape this Devils blue line. Next selection, the Minnesota Wild would select Dawson Mercer. Now, Dawson Mercer is a pretty known offensive player, 6 feet tall, about 180 pounds, originally born in Newfoundland, been a top prospect for this draft, been a steady riser really for the most part of the year. Ended up making Team Canada for the World Juniors this past year, but didn't really have a big role. But as we know, the Minnesota Wild desperately need more help at the forward position, especially players who can be top 6 offensive players, and Dawson Mercer has the potential to be that. Now, he probably needs at least 1, maybe 2 years away before making the jump to the NHL, but he still has a lot of offensive potential and fits what they need right now. Next up, we have the Winnipeg Jets, and I have them selecting Ottawa 67's forward Jack Quinn. Now, Jack Quinn's been another player who's been a pretty steady riser throughout the current season, moving his way up the draft rankings. He's a really intelligent, smart player, pretty well-rounded, pretty good at creating plays. He's a great scorer as well, really good at making space for himself and his teammates. Really, overall, I think Jack Quinn's a little bit underrated by many. He's put up some terrific offensive numbers without always getting to play big minutes in those high situations with the top line there. So Quinn, to me, would be a great fit in Winnipeg. I know that they could use some help on the blue line. I just don't know if the other defensemen right now that are available at this stage in the draft would be good enough for them to pass up a guy like Quinn or a few of the other forwards here that are still on the board. Next up, we have the Florida Panthers, and I have them selecting from the Western Hockey League's Portland Winterhawks winger Seth Jarvis. Now, Jarvis is another player who has certainly gone up the ranks a fair bit through the season. Had a tremendous draft season. He's certainly wrapped up the year with some impressive totals, 42 goals and 98 points in 54 games. He's certainly not afraid to go to the net and get into the dirty areas and get into those high danger areas. He's certainly not afraid to do that at all, which makes him a threat every time he's on the ice. He certainly can be an explosive player, can blend well with other top players. He's got pretty good speed as well, pretty good skill. And overall, I think he's a different kind of prospect than the Florida Panthers have. And I know some have him ranked a little bit lower into this first round amongst their mock drafts, but I see Jarvis is kind of being one of those players kind of under the radar that I see a team taking a chance in that mid-round. He's just too good offensively, in my opinion, to pass up. Next up with our last pick in this mock draft, we have the Columbus Blue Jackets, and I have them selecting center iceman Dylan Holloway. Now, Holloway's got tremendous vision, good decision-making skills away from the puck as well, which makes him a complete overall player that many GMs and scouts really want to see. Plays a solid 200-foot game. He's always engaged in puck battles, always works hard every shift, has a good mix of strong offensive and defensive skills, never backs down as well, and I think he'd be a great fit with the Columbus Blue Jackets. Now, he is playing college hockey, so it's hard to say exactly when he makes that jump to pro hockey. They may have to be patient for a year or two, but based on players that are available at this point in the draft, I think it's worth the wait for them. Those are your top 15 draft selections based on my opinion on what players I think these teams are going to select. As always, I want to know what your thoughts and opinions are down below in the comments, so make sure you leave me some comments. Let me know what players you would select for these teams if they're picking in this particular order. We'll probably run a couple more simulations between now and the time that we have the actual draft lottery in the 26th, so stay tuned for that. At least it's something exciting to look forward to in the not too distant future. Thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you next time.